Hey everyone, hope you're doing well, and I'm so glad you've decided to join us again. Tonight we are exploring weird rules you'd have to follow in a medieval monastery. So before you get comfortable, please take a moment to like and subscribe. If you genuinely enjoy our nighttime stories, let me know in the comments where in the world you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always so fascinating to see who's joining us from around the globe. Now it's time to dim the lights and relax as we start our story. The heavy wooden doors of the monastery close behind you with a resonant thud that echoes through stone corridors. And in that moment, the world you have known dissolves into silence, replaced by a rhythm of bells and whispered prayers that will govern every breath you take for the remainder of your earthly days. The rule of Saint Benedict, written in the 6th century, spreads before you like an intricate map of human conduct, each provision carefully crafted to guide the soul toward divine contemplation, while managing the practical necessities of communal life among men who have surrendered their individual wills to a higher purpose. Your first morning begins before dawn, when the bell for matins pierces the darkness at what lay people would call 2 o'clock, though here time moves not by the merchant's clock, but by the rhythm of canonical hours that divide the day into segments of prayer, work and contemplation. You rise from your narrow straw mattress, covered by a single woolen blanket that must serve in all seasons, and dress in the dim light filtering through small windows cut high in the stone walls. The habit you don each morning consists of a long tunic of rough-woven wool, dyed the particular shade prescribed by your order: black for Benedictines, white for Cistercians, brown for Franciscans, each color carrying centuries of tradition and theological significance woven into its very fibers. The morning ritual of dressing follows precise regulations that govern even the most intimate aspects of daily life. Your undergarments, if permitted at all, must be of the simplest linen, and the number of garments you may possess is strictly limited by rules that account for washing, mending, and seasonal variation. 2 tunics, one to wear while the other is cleaned, 2 pairs of stockings woven from sheep's wool, a single pair of leather shoes that must last until they can no longer be mended, and a belt of rope or leather that serves not only practical, but symbolic purposes, representing the binding of earthly desires in service to divine will. The procession to the chapel for morning prayer moves through corridors where speaking is forbidden, except in designated areas, and at prescribed times. The Great Silence, which begins after compline and extends until after prime the following morning, creates a cocoon of quietude that wraps around the community like a living thing, broken only by the soft shuffle of sandaled feet on stone floors worn smooth by centuries of such processions. The very architecture of the monastery reinforces this culture of contemplative silence, with corridors designed to minimize echo and distraction, doorways positioned to discourage casual congregation, and sleeping quarters arranged to provide each brother with sufficient space for private prayer, while maintaining the communal nature of monastic life. In the chapel, your place in the choir stalls is determined by the date of your profession, creating a hierarchy based not on worldly achievement, but on the length of your commitment to the religious life. The newest novices stand nearest the door, while the most senior brothers occupy stalls closest to the altar, this arrangement serving both practical and spiritual purposes, as the younger brothers can observe and learn from their elders, while the community maintains its sense of ordered progression through the stages of monastic development. The chanting of psalms follows precise musical notations developed over centuries, each note and inflection prescribed by custom and regulation, the human voice becoming an instrument tuned to celestial harmonies that rise through stone arches toward wooden rafters darkened by centuries of candle smoke and incense. The reading of lessons during these morning hours draws from a cycle of scriptures and religious texts that unfolds throughout the liturgical year, each day's selection carefully chosen to complement the season's spiritual emphasis, while providing the community with systematic exposure to the full breadth of Christian teaching. The lectionary used in your monastery may follow the Roman tradition, or it might reflect regional variations developed by local bishops and abbots, who adapted the universal practices to the particular needs and customs of their geographic area, creating subtle differences in emphasis and interpretation that give each religious house its distinctive spiritual character, while maintaining connection to the broader church. After prime, The first work period begins, and here the rules governing daily labor reveal the monastic understanding of physical work as spiritual discipline. The assignment of tasks follows a complex system that considers each brother's abilities, physical limitations, previous experience, and spiritual development, with the understanding that all honest work serves God equally, whether it involves copying manuscripts in the scriptorium, tending gardens, maintaining buildings, or preparing meals in the kitchen. The tools used for these various labors are considered sacred objects in their own right, blessed annually, and maintained with the same reverence shown to liturgical vessels, each implement stored in its designated place, and handled with care that reflects the monastic principle that all created things participate in divine goodness when used according to their proper purpose. The scriptorium operates under particularly detailed regulations that govern everything from the preparation of parchment to the mixing of inks, the spacing of lines, and the formation of individual letters. The scribes work in silence, communicating only through an elaborate system of hand signals developed specifically for the copying hall, where the scratch of quills on parchment creates a gentle rhythm that underlies the quiet concentration of brothers bent over their work tables. The parchment itself must be prepared according to ancient methods that transform animal skins into smooth writing surfaces through processes of soaking, scraping, stretching, and treating with lime and other materials that remove every trace of the creature's former life, while creating a medium capable of preserving human thought and divine revelation for centuries to come. The preparation of ink involves the careful selection and grinding of materials that will produce colors both beautiful and permanent, with black ink made from oak galls, iron, and gum arabic mixed in proportions that have been refined through generations of experimentation and tradition. Red ink for capitals and decorative elements requires cinnabar or red lid, while gold leaf for the most precious illuminations demands skills in metalwork and adhesion that transform the scriptorium into a workshop where art and devotion merge in the creation of objects that serve both practical and aesthetic purposes. The binding of completed books follows equally precise methods, with covers of wood and leather designed to protect the precious contents while reflecting the spiritual significance of the texts through their materials and construction techniques. In the garden, the cultivation of vegetables, herbs and medicinal plants follows schedules determined by both agricultural necessity and religious calendar, with certain crops planted or harvested in coordination with feast days and liturgical seasons that give spiritual meaning to the cycles of growth and dormancy that govern all living things. The monastery's herbal garden serves not only the community's needs for seasoning and medicine, but also the broader population of the surrounding area, with brothers trained in the preparation of remedies according to recipes preserved in manuscripts that blend classical knowledge with Christian understanding of the healing arts as participation in divine mercy toward human suffering. The kitchen operates under rules that govern not only the preparation of food but also the quantities served, the combinations of ingredients permitted during different liturgical seasons, and the proper blessing and distribution of meals that sustain the body while nurturing the soul through gratitude and moderation. The monastery's diet varies significantly with the seasons and the agricultural calendar, with periods of abundance during harvest time, balanced by intervals of restriction that serve both practical and spiritual purposes, teaching the community to depend on divine providence while managing resources wisely for the long-term sustainability of the religious house. The preparation of bread, the community's primary staple, follows ancient methods that transform grain into nourishment through processes that require skill, patience, and understanding of natural fermentation, and the behavior of yeast cultures maintained through careful attention and regular feeding. The grinding of grain in the monastery's mill, whether powered by water, wind or human labor, creates flour that varies in texture and nutritional value depending on the thoroughness of the grinding process and the quality of the grain, with different grades used for different purposes according to regulations that balance economy with the community's commitment to providing adequate nourishment for men engaged in both physical labor and intensive spiritual practice. The refectory, where meals are consumed in silence while one brother reads aloud from religious texts, operates according to precise customs that govern seating arrangements, the serving of food, and the communication necessary for the orderly distribution of meals without disrupting the contemplative atmosphere that transforms eating from mere physical necessity into spiritual exercise. The selection of readings for meal times follows a cycle that exposes the community to a broad range of religious literature throughout the year, with works chosen to edify and instruct while avoiding material that might excite the passions or distract from the peaceful consumption of food offered in gratitude to divine providence. The scriptorium's daily routine begins after prime, with the careful preparation of work surfaces, the examination of writing instruments for proper condition, and the review of the previous day's progress on current projects that might include copying liturgical books, transcribing theological treatises, or creating entirely new works of religious instruction and spiritual guidance. The assignment of specific texts to individual copyists considers not only their skill level and experience but also their spiritual development and particular interests, with more complex theological works reserved for brothers whose understanding and discretion can be trusted to handle difficult or controversial material without confusion or error. The process of copying a single manuscript page requires hours of concentrated attention, beginning with the careful measurement and ruling of lines that will guide the formation of letters and ensure consistent spacing throughout the text. The preparation of the quill pen involves the selection of suitable feathers, usually from geese or swans, which must be properly cured, cut, and shaped to produce instruments capable of holding ink while creating letters of uniform thickness and clarity. The cutting of a quill requires considerable skill, as the angle and shape of the nib determine the character of the writing it produces, with different styles of script requiring different pen preparations and writing techniques that must be mastered through years of practice under the guidance of experienced scribes. The illumination of manuscripts adds layers of complexity to the copying process, requiring additional skills in drawing, painting, and the application of gold leaf that transform written texts into objects of beauty worthy of the sacred content they preserve. The creation of illuminated capitals involves the careful planning of decorative elements that complement the text while demonstrating the monastery's commitment to offering God the finest work of human hands and minds. The pigments used for illumination come from various sources, some local and others imported from distant lands, each requiring specific preparation methods and application techniques that have been developed and refined through centuries of artistic tradition within the monastic context. The binding of completed manuscripts requires the skills of a craftsman who understands both the practical requirements of book construction and the symbolic significance of creating durable containers for sacred texts. The wooden boards that form the covers must be carefully selected and prepared, with grain and density appropriate for protecting the contents while allowing the book to open and close smoothly through years of regular use. The leather covering these boards must be properly prepared through processes of tanning and treatment that ensure longevity while providing surfaces suitable for tooling and decoration that reflect the spiritual significance of the contents. The monastery's library operates under strict regulations governing access to books, the care and handling of volumes, the creation of catalogues that track the location and condition of texts, and the lending of materials to other religious houses that participate in networks of intellectual exchange throughout the Christian world. The arrangement of books follows systems that balance practical accessibility with security concerns, as many volumes represent years of labor and contain irreplaceable texts that must be protected from damage, theft or misuse while remaining available for the legitimate needs of study and worship. The daily horarium, or schedule of prayers and activities, divides the day into segments that balance the demands of communal worship, private meditation, necessary labor, and the physical requirements of sleep and nourishment, according to principles established by the founders of monastic life and refined through centuries of experience in creating sustainable communities of men dedicated to seeking God through structured living. The bells that signal transitions between these activities become the heartbeat of monastic life, their bronze voices calling the community to gather for prayer, to begin work, to share meals, and to rest according to rhythms that align human activity with the cosmic order of creation itself. The chapter house serves as the location for daily meetings where the community gathers to hear readings from the rule, to conduct necessary business, to receive instruction from the abbot, and to address matters of discipline and correction that arise in any group of human beings living in close proximity while striving for spiritual perfection. The seating in the chapter house reflects the hierarchical nature of monastic community, with the abbot's chair positioned to emphasize his role as spiritual father and temporal administrator, while the arrangement of other seats acknowledges the varying degrees of authority and responsibility held by different members of the community. The process of confession and spiritual direction provides individual attention to each brother's particular needs and struggles, while maintaining the communal nature of monastic life through shared commitment to growth in virtue and understanding. The abbot or designated spiritual directors meet regularly with each member of the community to discuss progress in prayer, difficulties in observing the rule, and personal matters that affect one's ability to participate fully in the common life of the monastery. These conversations require great discretion and wisdom, as they involve the most intimate aspects of spiritual development while serving the broader goal of maintaining harmony and purpose within the religious community. The monastery's economic life operates according to principles that balance the community's need for material security with commitment to poverty and dependence on divine providence, creating systems of production, trade, and resource management that sustain the religious house while avoiding the accumulation of wealth for its own sake. The various workshops and productive activities of the monastery serve both internal needs and external relationships with the surrounding population, creating bonds of mutual benefit that connect the religious community to the broader society while maintaining the distinctiveness of monastic life and values. The care of the sick within the monastery follows detailed regulations that ensure proper medical attention while maintaining the spiritual character of the community, with special provisions for dietary modifications, exemptions from certain observances, and additional rest that allow healing while preserving the essential elements of religious life. The monastery's infirmary operates under the supervision of brothers trained in medical arts who combine practical knowledge of healing with understanding of the spiritual dimensions of illness and recovery, treating the whole person, rather than merely addressing physical symptoms. The process of dying within the monastic community involves elaborate rituals and customs that prepare both the departing brother and the remaining community for the transition from earthly to eternal life, with prayers, readings, and ceremonial observances that transform death from merely biological event into spiritual passage, surrounded by the support and intercession of the religious family. The care of the dying includes provisions for final confession, the reception of last sacraments, and the maintenance of prayerful vigil that ensures no brother faces death alone or without the spiritual resources necessary for preparing his soul for divine judgment and, hopefully, eternal salvation. The monastery's relationship with the outside world operates through carefully regulated channels that allow necessary contact while preserving the contemplative character of religious life, with designated brothers serving as intermediaries for business transactions, correspondence, and the reception of visitors who come seeking spiritual guidance, material assistance, or simply hospitality, according to the ancient Christian tradition of welcoming strangers as potential messengers of divine grace. The guest house provides accommodation for these visitors, while maintaining appropriate separation from the private areas of the monastery where the community conducts its internal life of prayer and work. The agricultural operations of the monastery follow seasonal cycles that coordinate planting, cultivation, and harvest with the liturgical calendar, creating rhythms of work that connect the community's spiritual life with the natural processes of growth and renewal that govern all earthly existence. The care of livestock requires daily attention to feeding, health, and breeding according to practices that ensure adequate production of meat, dairy products, and other animal-derived materials while treating the creatures as part of God's creation deserving of respectful care rather than mere commodities for human use. The maintenance of monastic buildings requires constant attention to repairs, improvements, and adaptations that preserve the physical structures necessary for community life,
while reflecting through their care and beauty the spiritual values that motivate the religious household. The monastery's church receives particular attention as the heart of communal worship, with regular cleaning, repair of furnishings, and maintenance of artistic elements that create an environment worthy of divine worship, while supporting the community's liturgical life through their beauty and functionality. The copying and preservation of books continues as one of the monastery's most important contributions to the broader culture, with scribes working systematically through projects that may require months or years to complete, their patient labor ensuring the survival of texts that would otherwise be lost to the accidents of time, war, and neglect that threaten all human achievements. The selection of texts for copying reflects both practical needs and cultural values, with priority given to liturgical books essential for worship, theological works necessary for education and spiritual formation, and classical texts whose preservation serves the broader cause of human learning and cultural continuity. The training of novices in the various skills necessary for monastic life requires experienced brothers to serve as masters and instructors, passing along not only technical knowledge, but also the spiritual understanding that transforms ordinary work into prayer and service to God. The apprenticeship system that governs this training ensures continuity of knowledge and practice, while allowing for gradual adaptation to changing circumstances and needs, creating traditions that remain stable over centuries while retaining flexibility to meet new challenges and opportunities. The monastery's workshop operations produce goods both for internal use and external trade, with craftsmen creating furniture, tools, decorative objects, and other items according to standards that emphasize durability, functionality, and beauty appropriate to their intended purposes. The techniques used in these workshops preserve ancient methods of construction and decoration, while allowing for innovations that improve efficiency and quality, creating objects that serve practical needs while reflecting the spiritual values of their makers through excellence of workmanship and attention to detail. The seasonal observances that punctuate the monastic year create rhythms of celebration and penance that connect the community's life to the great events of salvation history, while providing variety and renewal that sustain spiritual enthusiasm through the repetitive nature of daily observance. The preparation for major feasts involves additional prayers, special foods, decorative arrangements, and ceremonial observances that mark these occasions as particularly significant, while maintaining their integration into the ongoing pattern of religious life, rather than treating them as mere interruptions of normal routine. The monastery's library continues to grow through the acquisition of new texts, either purchased from other institutions, received as gifts from benefactors, or created within the scriptorium according to the community's assessment of its educational and spiritual needs. The care and organization of this collection requires systematic cataloging, regular inspection for damage or deterioration, and careful storage in conditions that preserve the books while making them accessible for legitimate scholarly and devotional use by members of the community and qualified visitors. The evening hours after Vespers provide time for private reading, personal prayer, and quiet reflection that complement the communal activities of the day, while allowing individual brothers to pursue particular interests and devotions that enhance their spiritual development within the framework of shared commitment to the religious life. The selection of reading material for these private hours follows guidelines that ensure appropriate content, while allowing for personal preference and spiritual direction that takes account of each individual's background, temperament, and stage of development in the monastic way of life. The chapter of faults provides regular opportunities for self-examination and mutual correction that maintain the community's commitment to spiritual growth, while addressing practical problems that arise in any group of people living together in pursuit of common goals. The procedures followed in these gatherings balance the need for honest acknowledgement of failures and mistakes with charitable understanding of human weakness, and the gradual nature of progress in virtue and spiritual understanding. The monastery's financial records document not only monetary transactions but also the complex web of relationships and obligations that connect the religious house to the broader economic and social networks of its region. creating archives that preserve valuable information about medieval commerce, agriculture, and social organization, while serving the practical needs of institutional management and legal documentation. The daily round of prayers continues to mark the passage of time according to rhythms established by centuries of monastic tradition, with each canonical hour bringing the community together for worship that connects their particular circumstances to the universal praise offered by Christians throughout the world, creating bonds of spiritual unity that transcend the limitations of geography and historical period, while grounding their lives in practices that have sustained religious communities through all the changes and challenges of human history. The dormitory arrangements reflect both practical necessities and spiritual principles, with sleeping areas designed to provide adequate rest while maintaining the communal character of monastic life, through shared facilities and proximity that discourage the development of excessive privacy or individual autonomy that might undermine the brothers' commitment to common life and mutual support in their shared pursuit of holiness and service to God. The tools and equipment used in various monastic activities receive careful maintenance and storage according to systems that ensure their availability when needed, while protecting them from damage or misuse that would interfere with the community's ability to carry out its work efficiently and effectively, creating practices of stewardship that reflect the spiritual principle of responsible care for all material goods, as gifts from divine providence, rather than personal possessions, to be used carelessly or selfishly. The regulation of sleep follows principles that balance the body's need for rest with the spiritual discipline of rising for night prayers, creating schedules that ensure adequate sleep while maintaining the rhythm of liturgical observance that marks the hours even during periods of rest and recuperation, integrating physical and spiritual needs into patterns of living that serve both the health of individual brothers and the communal requirements of shared worship and work.
What it was really like to work in a 19th century clock shop. The morning light filters through the tall windows of Whitman and Sons chronometer works, casting long shadows across workbenches laden with brass gears, steel springs, and delicate mechanisms that measure the passage of time with mechanical precision developed through centuries of refinement in the clockmaker's art. The shop awakens to the gentle symphony of ticking that emanates from dozens of timepieces in various stages of completion, their rhythmic voices creating a polyrhythmic backdrop that becomes as familiar as breathing to those who spend their days among these instruments of temporal measurement. Your apprenticeship begins with the grinding of mainsprings, a task that requires both physical strength and delicate touch as you work the steel through progressive stages of tempering and shaping that will determine the reliability and longevity of the finished timepiece. The forge in the corner of the workshop burns with carefully controlled heat, its temperature regulated through the addition of specific types of coal and the manipulation of airflow that creates the precise conditions necessary for working steel to the exacting standards demanded by chronometric precision. The anvil beside the forge bears the marks of countless hammer blows, its surface polished smooth by generations of clockmakers who have shaped metal components with patience and skill passed down through guild traditions that stretch back to the medieval craft workshops of German and Swiss clockmaking centers. The preparation of brass stock for gear cutting begins with the selection of metal alloys that contain precise proportions of copper and zinc, with small additions of tin or lead that modify the working properties of the material to suit different applications within the clock mechanism. The brass must be rolled to uniform thickness and annealed at specific temperatures that soften the metal sufficiently for cutting while maintaining the strength necessary to withstand the repetitive stresses of clock operation over decades of continuous use. The rolling mill in the workshop operates through a system of gears and levers that allows precise control over the thickness of metal sheets, with measurements taken frequently using calipers calibrated to hundredths of an inch accuracy that ensures consistency across all components of a given timepiece. The cutting of gear teeth requires specialized tools and techniques that have been refined through centuries of clockmaking tradition, with each tooth shaped to precise profiles that ensure smooth power transmission and minimal wear over the extended operating life expected from quality timepieces. The The indexing head that positions the gear blank for each successive cut operates through a complex mechanism of worm gears and dividing plates that allow the creation of wheels with any desired number of teeth, from the simple 8-tooth pinions used in striking mechanisms to the elaborate 100-tooth wheels found in astronomical clocks that track the movements of celestial bodies with mathematical precision. The workshop's collection of hand tools fills multiple cabinets and drawers, each implement designed for specific operations in the clockmaking process and maintained with the care befitting instruments whose precision directly affects the accuracy of the finished timepieces. The files used for shaping gear teeth come in dozens of different profiles and cuts, from coarse bastard files for rough shaping to smooth finishing files that create surfaces polished to mirror brightness. The gravers used for cutting decorative elements and fine adjustments require frequent sharpening on whetstones of varying grits, with the angle and profile of each tool carefully maintained to produce consistent results across the many components that require hand finishing. The lathe that dominates one corner of the workshop represents the pinnacle of precision tool-making, its bed machined to tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch and equipped with change gears that allow the cutting of threads and the turning of components to dimensions that rival the accuracy of the finest scientific instruments. The operation of this lathe requires understanding of cutting speeds, feed rates, and tool geometry that comes only through years of experience and careful observation of how different materials respond to various machining operations. The brass and steel components that emerge from the lathe bear the characteristic surface finish and dimensional accuracy that distinguish quality clockwork from inferior imitations produced in factories where speed takes precedence over precision. The assembly of clock movements follows procedures that have been developed through generations of craftsmen who understood that the reliability of mechanical timepieces depends not only on the accuracy of individual components, but also on the methods used to combine them into functioning mechanisms. The main plates that support the gear trains must be carefully aligned and secured with screws that are themselves precision components, threaded to exact specifications and finished with attention to both function and appearance. The pivots that support the rotating wheels require careful fitting to their bearing holes, with clearances that allow smooth operation while preventing excessive play that would affect timekeeping accuracy. The regulation of pendulum clocks involves adjustments to the length of the pendulum rod that affect the period of oscillation according to mathematical relationships discovered by Galileo and refined by subsequent generations of natural philosophers and clockmakers. The rating nut that provides fine adjustment of pendulum length operates through precisely cut threads that allow changes measured in fractions of a turn, with each small adjustment producing measurable effects on the clock's daily rate that can be observed and recorded over extended periods of testing. The suspension spring that supports the pendulum requires careful selection and shaping to provide the proper combination of flexibility and strength, with the metal work hardened through controlled bending operations that optimize its elastic properties. The mainspring that powers the clock mechanism requires careful installation and adjustment to ensure proper torque delivery throughout its unwinding cycle, with the spring steel shaped and tempered to provide consistent force output as it releases the energy stored during winding. The barrel that contains the mainspring must be precisely machined to allow smooth operation while containing the considerable forces generated by the compressed spring, with the barrel arbor and gear train designed to multiply the spring's torque while reducing its rotational speed to the rates required for proper timekeeping. The click and ratchet mechanism that prevents the mainspring from unwinding during winding operations requires precise fitting and adjustment to ensure reliable engagement while minimizing friction and wear. The escapement mechanism that controls the release of power from the mainspring represents the heart of the timekeeping system, with anchor and wheel components shaped to precise profiles that determine the accuracy and stability of the clock's rate. The pallet stones that contact the escape wheel teeth must be carefully selected and shaped from hard materials such as agate or synthetic ruby, with angles and clearances adjusted to provide proper impulse delivery while minimizing friction and wear. The adjustment of the escapement requires understanding of the complex interactions between pendulum motion, pallet engagement, and wheel rotation that affect both timekeeping accuracy and the clock's ability to maintain consistent operation under varying conditions. The striking mechanism that announces the hours operates through a complex system of cams, levers, and counting wheels that must be carefully timed to ensure accurate hour indication while providing sufficient power for clear bell or gong operation. The programming of the striking sequence involves the precise shaping of cam profiles that control the lifting and releasing of hammers according to patterns that have been standardized across different clock-making traditions. The gathering pallet that counts the hour strikes requires careful adjustment to ensure proper engagement with the count wheel while providing smooth operation that does not interfere with the time-keeping function of the clock. The case making that houses the clock movement requires collaboration with cabinet makers and carvers who specialize in creating wooden enclosures that protect the mechanism while providing visual appeal appropriate to the clock's intended setting. The selection of wood species considers both aesthetic and practical factors, with preferences for materials that provide dimensional stability while accepting finishes that enhance the natural beauty of the grain patterns. The joinery techniques used in case construction must accommodate the seasonal movement of wood, while providing rigid support for the clock movement, and maintaining proper alignment of doors, panels, and decorative elements over years of use in varying environmental conditions. The dial-making process creates the interface between the clock mechanism and its users, with numerals, hands, and decorative elements designed to provide clear time indication while complementing the overall aesthetic of the timepiece. The preparation of dial plates involves the careful shaping and finishing of brass or enamel surfaces that will bear the hour markers and other indications, with consideration given to both legibility and artistic merit. The painting or engraving of numerals and decorative elements requires specialized skills and materials, with techniques that ensure durability and resistance to fading or discoloration over the clock's operational lifetime. The hand-making process creates the pointers that indicate hours, minutes, and seconds through precisely shaped components that must be both functional and aesthetically pleasing while maintaining proper balance and minimal weight to avoid affecting the clock's timekeeping performance. The steel used for clock hands requires careful selection and heat treatment to provide the combination of strength, springiness, and workability necessary for shaping the complex profiles found in quality timepieces. The bluing process that gives steel hands their characteristic deep blue color involves controlled heating in the presence of oxygen that creates thin oxide films whose thickness determines the final color intensity and uniformity. The spring making for various clock applications requires understanding of metallurgy and mechanics that allows the creation of components capable of storing and releasing energy with consistent characteristics over millions of operating cycles. The steel wire used for springs must be drawn to precise diameters and tempered to specific hardness levels that optimize performance for particular applications, whether in mainsprings that power the clock or hairsprings that regulate the balance wheel in portable timepieces. The coiling and forming of springs involves specialized tools and techniques that ensure proper stress distribution and dimensional accuracy, while avoiding work hardening that could affect performance or longevity. The jeweling of clock bearings, where synthetic or natural gems provide low-friction pivots for rotating components, requires precise drilling and fitting operations that create bearing surfaces capable of supporting rotating shafts with minimal wear over extended operating periods. The selection of jewel materials considers hardness, thermal stability, and manufacturing characteristics, with synthetic rubies increasingly preferred over natural stones due to their consistent properties and freedom from internal flaws that could affect bearing performance. The setting of jewels into clock plates involves specialized tools and adhesives that ensure permanent installation while maintaining precise dimensional relationships between bearing surfaces. The testing and regulation of completed timepieces involves systematic procedures for evaluating timekeeping accuracy under various conditions of position, temperature, and power reserve that simulate the environmental variations the clock will encounter in normal use. The recording of daily rates requires careful observation and documentation over extended periods, with adjustments made to pendulum length, escapement geometry, or weight distribution to optimize performance within acceptable tolerances. The establishment of these testing protocols reflects the clockmaker's understanding that mechanical timekeepers are sensitive instruments whose accuracy depends on careful attention to numerous interacting factors that affect their operation.
The repair and maintenance of existing timepieces forms a significant portion of the clockmaker's work, requiring diagnostic skills that can identify worn or damaged components among the hundreds of parts that make up complex clock mechanisms. The disassembly of clock movements follows systematic procedures that ensure proper identification and storage of components while documenting their original relationships and adjustments for accurate reassembly. The cleaning of clock parts involves solvents and techniques that remove accumulated dirt and oxidized lubricants without damaging delicate surfaces or affecting the dimensional accuracy of precision components. The manufacture of replacement parts for antique or damaged clocks requires the ability to work from existing components or historical documentation to recreate elements that may no longer be available from original sources. The duplication of gear teeth, spring characteristics or decorative elements demands not only technical skill but also understanding of historical manufacturing methods and materials that ensures compatibility with original components. The documentation of these reproduction parts creates records that future clockmakers can reference when similar repair challenges arise, contributing to the preservation of clockmaking knowledge and techniques. The apprenticeship system that governs the training of new clockmakers involves graduated exposure to increasingly complex tasks and responsibilities, beginning with basic filing and finishing operations and progressing through the various specializations required for complete clock manufacture. The master clockmaker's role in this training process involves not only technical instruction but also the transmission of aesthetic judgment and quality standards that distinguish superior craftsmanship from merely adequate work. The evaluation of apprentice progress requires ongoing assessment of both technical competence and understanding of the principles that underlie successful clockmaking practice. The workshop organization that supports efficient clockmaking operations involves the systematic arrangement of tools, materials, and work surfaces that minimize wasted motion while providing easy access to the equipment needed for various operations. The storage systems for small parts and hardware must protect delicate components while allowing quick identification and retrieval during assembly operations, with labels and organization schemes that remain comprehensible to all workshop personnel. The maintenance of tool condition requires regular inspection and refurbishment of cutting implements, measuring instruments, and specialized equipment whose accuracy directly affects product quality. The relationship between clockmakers and their suppliers involves ongoing evaluation of material quality and consistency that ensures reliable access to components meeting the exacting standards required for precision timekeeping instruments. The brass stock, steel wire, and other raw materials used in clock manufacture must meet specifications for composition, mechanical properties, and dimensional accuracy that may exceed the requirements of other metalworking trades. The establishment of these supplier relationships often involves personal inspection of manufacturing facilities and testing procedures that verify the quality control measures used by vendors. The seasonal variations in workshop activity reflect both the agricultural calendar that governs rural customers' financial resources and the practical considerations of working with materials and processes that are sensitive to temperature and humidity changes. The heating and ventilation of the workshop must maintain conditions suitable for precision work while accommodating the heat output of forges and the ventilation requirements of finishing operations that involve solvents or other potentially hazardous materials. The planning of production schedules considers these environmental factors along with customer delivery requirements and the availability of specialized labor for particular operations. The record keeping that documents clock production involves detailed logs of materials used, time required for various operations, and quality control observations that provide data for improving manufacturing efficiency and product reliability. The customer files that track repair work and warranty service create valuable information about component longevity and failure modes that inform design improvements in future timepieces. The inventory control systems that manage raw materials, work in progress, and finished goods require careful attention to prevent shortages that could delay production while avoiding excessive investment in materials that deteriorate during storage. The guild relationships that connect individual clockmakers to their professional community provide access to technical information, training opportunities, and quality standards that maintain the reputation of the craft while promoting continued development of clockmaking knowledge and techniques. The examination procedures that qualify journeymen for advancement to master status involve demonstration of technical competence across the full range of clockmaking operations, along with evidence of understanding the business and ethical principles that govern professional practice. The mentorship relationships that develop within these guild structures create networks of mutual support and knowledge sharing that strengthen the entire clockmaking community. The innovation and experimentation that drives improvements in clockmaking technology occurs within the context of established traditions and proven principles, with new ideas tested against rigorous performance standards before adoption in commercial production. The development of improved escapement designs, spring materials, or manufacturing techniques requires extensive testing and validation that may span years of development work before practical application. The documentation of these innovations contributes to the growing body of horological knowledge that benefits the entire clockmaking community, while establishing the reputation of individual craftsmen as leaders in their field. The quality control procedures that ensure consistent performance of finished timepieces involve systematic inspection and testing at multiple stages of the manufacturing process, with checkpoints designed to identify and correct problems before they affect subsequent operations. The calibration of measuring instruments and testing equipment requires regular verification against known standards that maintain traceability to fundamental units of measurement. The statistical analysis of production data reveals trends and patterns that guide process improvements while identifying potential problems before they result in customer complaints or warranty claims. The customer service that supports clock sales and maintenance involves ongoing relationships that may span decades as timepieces are serviced, repaired, and eventually passed to subsequent generations of owners who value both the practical utility and sentimental significance of quality mechanical timekeepers. The education of customers in proper winding regulation and care procedures helps ensure optimal performance while reducing the likelihood of damage from misuse or neglect. The warranty policies that guarantee clockmaker workmanship reflect confidence in manufacturing quality while establishing clear expectations for product performance and service support. The technological developments that influence clockmaking practice include improvements in metallurgy, precision tooling, and scientific understanding of timekeeping principles that create opportunities for enhanced accuracy and reliability in mechanical timepieces. The adoption of new materials such as improved steel alloys or synthetic jewel bearings requires careful evaluation of their performance characteristics and compatibility with established manufacturing methods. The integration of these innovations into traditional clockmaking practice maintains continuity with historical methods while incorporating beneficial advances that improve product quality and manufacturing efficiency.
Why you'd struggle with a job at the 1800s post office. The morning ritual begins before dawn at the central post office, where gas lamps flicker along corridors lined with sorting cases that stretch from floor to ceiling, each compartment labeled with destinations that span the growing network of American towns and cities, connected by an increasingly complex web of railway lines, stagecoach routes, and steamboat schedules that determine the rhythm and possibility of communication across vast distances. Your position as a postal clerk requires mastery of geographic knowledge that encompasses not only major cities and their postal designations, but also the countless smaller communities, rural post offices, and temporary settlements that appear and disappear with the westward expansion of population and commerce. The sorting case that dominates your workspace contains hundreds of individual compartments, each marked with careful handwriting that identifies specific destinations according to a hierarchical system that begins with states and territories, subdivides into counties and major postal districts, and finally specifies individual post offices and rural delivery routes that serve the scattered population of a nation still largely agricultural in character. The memorization of this complex geography requires months of dedicated study, with experienced clerks serving as mentors who share mnemonic devices and organizational strategies developed through years of handling mail, bound for destinations that may exist only as names on survey maps or optimistic plat drawings filed in distant territorial offices. The handwriting, recognition skills demanded by postal work in an era before standardized, addressing conventions or mechanical sorting equipment, require the ability to decipher scripts ranging from the careful penmanship taught in urban academies to the rough scrawls of frontier correspondents who may have learned to write by lamplight in one-room schoolhouses or through correspondence courses advertised in agricultural periodicals. The fading ink, water damage, and physical wear that affect letters during their journey through the postal system create additional challenges in determining the intended destinations of correspondence that may have traveled hundreds of miles by wagon or railroad car before reaching your sorting table. The rate calculations that determine postage charges involve complex schedules that vary according to distance, weight, and service level, with different rates applying to letters, newspapers, printed matter, and packages according to regulations that change periodically as Congress adjusts postal policy to balance revenue needs with the democratic principle of affordable communication for all citizens. The postal scales used for these determinations require regular calibration and careful handling to ensure accuracy in measurements that directly affect both postal revenue and customer satisfaction. With disputes over postage calculations requiring diplomatic resolution skills that maintain positive relationships while upholding postal regulations. The money handling responsibilities of postal clerks include not only the collection of postage fees, but also the operation of the postal savings system that provides banking services to communities lacking commercial financial institutions, requiring knowledge of interest calculations, deposit procedures, and withdrawal protocols that transform post offices into informal community banks, serving customers who may travel considerable distances to conduct their monetary transactions. The security procedures that protect postal funds involve multiple levels of verification and documentation, with daily accounting requirements that must balance to the penny despite the challenges of handling numerous small transactions in an era before mechanical calculators or standardized record-keeping systems. The registry service that provides secure handling for valuable correspondence and packages involves elaborate tracking and documentation procedures that create paper trails following registered items through every stage of their postal journey, from acceptance to final delivery. The registry books that record these transactions must be maintained with meticulous attention to detail, as they serve as legal documents in case of loss or damage claims that may involve substantial financial consequences for the postal service. The special handling procedures for registered mail include locked pouches, witness transfers, and signature receipts that add layers of security while creating administrative burdens that significantly extend processing time for these premium services. The dead letter office procedures that handle undeliverable mail require systematic investigation and documentation efforts that attempt to determine correct addresses or return correspondence to senders when possible, creating a complex bureaucratic process that involves correspondence with postmasters throughout the postal network and consultation of city directories, business registers, and other reference materials that might provide clues to the intended recipients of misdirected mail. The storage and eventual disposal of unclaimed letters follows strict protocols designed to protect the privacy of correspondence while recovering any items of obvious value that can be returned to their rightful owners through additional investigative efforts. The relationship with railroad companies that transport mail according to contracts specifying schedules, routes, and compensation arrangements requires postal clerks to coordinate their sorting and dispatching activities with train timetables that may change seasonally or due to operational necessities, such as track maintenance, weather conditions, or equipment failures that disrupt the carefully choreographed movement of mail across the national transportation network. The railway mail service that sorts correspondence en route operates according to specialized procedures that maximize efficiency while accommodating the space limitations and motion constraints of working in railroad cars equipped with sorting facilities and temporary post office equipment. The rural delivery system that extends postal service to agricultural areas operates through star route contracts with private carriers who transport mail over designated routes, according to schedules that accommodate the seasonal weather variations in road conditions and the scattered nature of rural population settlement patterns. The coordination of these services requires understanding of geographic and logistical challenges that affect the reliability and frequency of mail delivery to customers who may depend on postal service for essential communication with distant family members, business associates, and government agencies that conduct much of their correspondence through the mail system. The foreign mail processing that handles international correspondence involves knowledge of postal treaties, exchange rates, and routing procedures that govern the movement of letters and packages between nations, according to agreements negotiated through diplomatic channels and administered by postal authorities in participating countries. The calculation of international postage rates requires understanding of weight conversions, currency exchange rates, and service classifications that vary significantly between different destination countries and may change based on diplomatic relationships or transportation availability that affects the routing options for overseas mail. The newspaper and periodical handling that constitutes a significant portion of postal volume involves special rates and procedures designed to support the distribution of printed matter considered essential to democratic government and public education, with publishers receiving preferential treatment that reflects the importance of widespread access to information and opinion in a republic dependent upon informed citizen participation in political processes. The bundling and routing of these publications requires understanding of circulation patterns, delivery schedules, and handling procedures that accommodate the time-sensitive nature of news, while managing the logistical challenges of distributing thousands of individual periodicals to subscribers scattered across diverse geographic areas. The postal inspection duties that ensure compliance with regulations prohibiting the transmission of illegal or dangerous materials through the mail system require knowledge of prohibited items, detection methods, and enforcement procedures that balance public safety concerns with respect for privacy rights and the principle of free communication that underlies the Postal Service mission. The training in these inspection techniques involves learning to identify suspicious packages, questionable correspondence, and potential violations of postal laws without unnecessarily delaying legitimate mail or creating adversarial relationships with customers who depend upon postal services for their personal and business communication needs. The equipment maintenance responsibilities that keep postal operations running smoothly involve care and adjustment of scales, sorting equipment, stamp cancellation devices, and other mechanical tools that require regular attention to ensure accurate and efficient processing of mail volumes that may fluctuate significantly based on seasonal patterns, economic conditions, and special circumstances, such as holiday periods or major news events that generate increased correspondence activity. The procurement and inventory management of postal supplies includes stamps, forms, bags, locks, and countless other items needed for daily operations, with ordering procedures that must anticipate future needs while avoiding excessive inventory that ties up limited financial resources. The customer service responsibilities that maintain positive relationships between the postal service and the public involve diplomatic handling of complaints, patient explanation of complex regulations, and assistance with addressing problems that may arise from misunderstanding of postal requirements or procedures that seem unnecessarily complicated to customers accustomed to simpler commercial transactions. The resolution of delivery problems, damage claims, and service disputes requires investigation skills and negotiation abilities that protect both postal interests and customer satisfaction, while maintaining the reputation of the Postal Service as a reliable and trustworthy institution essential to national communication needs. The record-keeping requirements that document postal operations involve multiple ledgers, reports, and correspondence files that track financial transactions, service performance, personnel matters, and operational statistics used by postal headquarters
to monitor system performance and plan for future service improvements or expansion into new geographic areas. The preparation of these reports requires attention to detail and mathematical accuracy that ensures reliable data for decision-making, while meeting deadlines that coordinate local reporting with national compilation of postal statistics used for congressional reporting and budget justification purposes. The seasonal variations in postal workload create periods of intense activity, alternating with slower intervals that allow for equipment maintenance, staff training, and system improvements that enhance service quality during peak demand periods, such as Christmas season, election periods, or harvest times when agricultural communities generate increased correspondence and package volume. The staffing adjustments needed to accommodate these fluctuations involve coordination with postal headquarters and careful scheduling that ensures adequate coverage, while managing labor costs within budget constraints that affect postal service profitability and political sustainability. The training and supervision of new postal employees involves systematic instruction in regulations, procedures, and local practices that may vary significantly between different post offices, depending on their size, location, and the specific services they provide to their communities. The development of competence in postal work requires months of guided practice under experienced supervision, with gradual assumption of increased responsibilities as new employees demonstrate proficiency in basic procedures and develop the judgment needed for independent decision-making. In the numerous situations that require interpretation of regulations or adaptation of standard procedures to unusual circumstances, the security measures that protect mail from theft, damage, or tampering involve procedures for handling valuable items, maintaining custody of postal keys and equipment, and reporting suspicious activities that might indicate attempts to compromise postal security or misuse postal services for illegal purposes. The coordination with law enforcement agencies that investigate postal crimes requires understanding of legal procedures and evidence preservation, techniques that support successful prosecution while maintaining the integrity of postal operations that must continue despite security investigations or enforcement actions that may disrupt normal routines. The technological innovations that gradually improve postal operations include experiments with pneumatic tube systems, mechanical sorting devices, and improved transportation methods that promise to increase efficiency and reduce costs while maintaining or improving service quality for customers who have come to depend upon reliable mail delivery for their personal and business communication needs. The evaluation and implementation of these innovations requires careful testing and gradual introduction that minimizes disruption to established procedures while capturing the benefits of improved technology and more efficient operational methods. The inter-office communication that coordinates operations between different levels of the postal hierarchy involves regular correspondence with district offices, regional headquarters, and the Postmaster General's office in Washington that disseminates policy changes, operational instructions, and performance expectations that must be implemented at the local level while accommodating the specific circumstances and challenges that affect individual post offices, serving diverse communities with varying needs and characteristics. The public relations activities that maintain community support for postal services include participation in civic events, cooperation with local business organizations, and educational efforts that help citizens understand postal regulations and procedures while building appreciation for the role of postal service in supporting economic development and social cohesion in communities that depend upon reliable communication links with the broader national economy and culture. The financial management responsibilities that ensure postal operations remain within budget constraints involve careful monitoring of expenses, revenue tracking, and cost control measures that balance service quality with fiscal responsibility while seeking opportunities for operational improvements that enhance efficiency without compromising the Postal Service mission of providing universal communication access to all citizens regardless of their geographic location or economic circumstances. The emergency procedures that maintain postal operations during natural disasters, transportation disruptions, or other crises require contingency planning and flexible response capabilities that ensure continued mail service, even under adverse conditions that may disrupt normal transportation routes, damage postal facilities, or create safety hazards for postal employees and customers who depend upon mail service for essential communication during emergency situations. The personnel management duties that supervise postal employees involve performance evaluation, disciplinary procedures, and professional development activities that maintain high standards of service while supporting employee career advancement and job satisfaction within the constraints of civil service regulations and budget limitations that affect compensation, working conditions, and promotional opportunities available to postal workers who choose careers in government service. The inventory control systems that manage postal supplies and equipment require systematic tracking of stock levels, usage patterns, and procurement schedules that ensure adequate supplies while minimizing waste and controlling costs through bulk purchasing, competitive bidding, and supplier relationships that provide quality materials at reasonable prices within the procurement regulations that govern government purchasing decisions and vendor selection processes.
What you'd hear while sitting in a 1900s train station all day. The dawn light filters through the tall arched windows of Union Station, casting long shadows across marble floors worn smooth by decades of hurried footsteps, while the first sounds of the day begin with the gentle hiss of steam radiators warming the cavernous waiting hall and the soft scraping of leather soles belonging to maintenance workers who arrive before passengers to prepare the station for another day of ceaseless activity. The rhythmic ticking of the great station clock echoes through the vaulted ceiling, its brass pendulum measuring time with mechanical precision that governs the intricate choreography of arrivals and departures that will unfold throughout the hours ahead. The morning telegraph key begins its staccato conversation with distant stations, dots and dashes clicking through copper wires that carry information about train positions, weather conditions, and track clearances across hundreds of miles of railway network, each message decoded by operators whose fingers move with practiced efficiency across brass keys worn bright by constant use. The telegrapher's chair creaks softly as he leans forward to transcribe incoming messages onto yellow forms that will direct the movements of locomotives carrying passengers and freight toward destinations scattered across the continental map displayed on the station wall, its colored pins marking routes that connect cities, towns, and rural stops in an expanding web of steel rails. The first passenger train of the morning approaches with a distant whistle that begins as a faint note barely distinguishable from the wind, growing steadily stronger until it becomes a full-throated call that announces the arrival of the 6:15 local from Philadelphia, its locomotive bell clanging rhythmically as the engineer applies the brakes and steam escapes from cylinders with sharp exhalations that punctuate the grinding of steel wheels against rails worn to mirror brightness by the passage of countless trains. The conductor's voice carries across the platform as he calls out station stops in a practiced cadence that has become second nature through years of announcing the same destinations to passengers who board and alight with the regularity of tides. The baggage handlers emerge from their warming shed with wooden carts that rumble across brick platforms, their iron wheels creating a steady percussion as they position themselves to receive trunks, valises, and parcels that will be transferred between trains according to routing tags written in the careful script of ticket agents who understand the complex connections required to move goods and passengers across the railway network. The leather straps and metal buckles of their work aprons creak with each movement as they lift and position cargo with practiced efficiency, their voices calling out car numbers and destinations in abbreviated codes that compress complex routing information into brief syllables understood by their colleagues but mysterious to casual observers. The station master emerges from his office with keys jangling from a ring attached to his vest, his footsteps echoing purposefully across the waiting hall as he unlocks gates and checks schedules posted on boards that list departure times, track assignments, and intermediate stops for trains that will depart throughout the day according to timetables coordinated with connecting railways that extend the reach of local service across state and territorial boundaries. His pocket watch, consulted frequently throughout the day, keeps time synchronized with railroad standard that governs the precise scheduling required for safe and efficient railway operations across thousands of miles of track. The coffee vendor arrives with his wheeled cart, the brass urn hissing softly as steam escapes through a relief valve, while cups and saucers rattle gently with each movement across the uneven brick platform. His voice, weathered by years of calling out prices and greetings to regular customers, announces the availability of hot coffee, fresh rolls and newspapers that bring news from distant cities to travelers who depend on these mobile merchants for sustenance during their journeys. The coins in his leather apron jingle with each transaction, creating a metallic counterpoint to the larger sounds of locomotives and railway equipment that dominate the station's acoustic environment. The first passengers of the day begin to arrive, their footsteps creating varied rhythms on marble floors as traveling boots, ladies' shoes and children's feet contribute to the growing symphony of human activity that will continue throughout the daylight hours. The rustle of silk dresses mingles with the heavier sounds of wool coats and leather traveling cases, while conversations begin in hushed tones that gradually increase in volume as more people gather in the waiting areas designated for different classes of service and destinations that determine their boarding procedures and seating assignments. The ticket window opens with the sound of brass hardware sliding in well-oiled grooves, followed by the soft thump of rubber stamps and the scratch of steel pens across carbon paper that creates multiple copies of passenger records required for accounting and regulatory purposes. The ticket agent's voice, professionally pleasant but efficient, repeats information about schedules, connections and baggage allowances while his hands sort through pasteboard tickets printed with complex information about routing, class of service, and validity dates that govern their use according to railway regulations developed through decades of operational experience. The freight office begins its daily operations with the rumble of hand trucks loaded with packages and parcels that will be sorted according to destinations and loaded onto appropriate trains throughout the day. The clerks call out consignee names and shipping addresses while checking manifests against actual cargo, their voices creating a steady background of commercial activity that reflects the railway's role in moving goods as well as passengers across the expanding network of American commerce and trade. The waiting room gradually fills with travelers whose conversations create a gentle murmur that rises and falls like distant surf, punctuated by the occasional louder exchange between acquaintances who encounter each other unexpectedly in the course of their journeys. The wooden benches creak softly under the weight of passengers who settle in to wait for their trains, while newspapers rustle as readers follow news from distant cities and foreign countries that arrives by telegraph and is printed in local papers that serve as windows to the wider world beyond their immediate communities. The ladies' retiring room sees periodic activity as female passengers make use of the wash basins, mirrors and comfortable seating provided for their convenience during extended waits between connections. The soft voices of women discussing travel plans and family news create a counterpoint to the predominantly male voices heard in the main waiting areas, while the rustle of silk and cotton garments adds textural variety to the station's acoustic tapestry. The attendant moves quietly among her domain, maintaining cleanliness and order while providing assistance and information to travelers who may be unfamiliar with railway customs and procedures. The morning mail train arrives with a different whistle pattern that identifies it to experienced ears as carrying postal cars that will be sorted and transferred according to routes that connect post offices throughout the region. The mail clerks work with practiced efficiency to exchange locked pouches and registered packages while railway postal workers continue their sorting activities in specially equipped cars that serve as mobile post offices, their voices calling out destinations and routing instructions that keep mail moving toward its intended recipients despite the complexity of the postal network that parallels and depends upon railway transportation. The express office handles shipments that require faster service than regular freight, with clerks processing packages and money transfers that connect the local station to a national network of commercial services that enable business transactions across great distances. The sound of sealing wax dripping onto documents mingles with the scratch of steel pens recording shipping information and the thump of rubber stamps that authenticate transactions according to company procedures designed to ensure security and accountability in handling valuable shipments. The restaurant begins preparation for the lunch crowd with the sounds of kitchen activity that include the chopping of vegetables, the clatter of pots and pans, and the hiss of gas flames under cooking vessels that will produce meals for travelers who have time to dine during extended layovers between connecting trains. The waiters set tables with china and silverware that create gentle percussion as they arrange place settings according to standards that aim to provide civilized dining service despite the transient nature of railway travel and the challenges of maintaining restaurant operations in a transportation facility. The afternoon brings increased activity as more trains arrive and depart according to schedules that concentrate passenger service during hours when most people prefer to travel, creating periods of intense activity alternating with quieter intervals that allow station personnel to catch up on routine maintenance and administrative tasks. The telegraph key maintains its steady conversation with distant stations, coordinating train movements and sharing information about delays, mechanical problems, or track conditions that might affect the precise timing required for safe railway operations across the network. The platform vendors expand their activities as passenger volume increases, their voices calling out the availability of fruit, sandwiches, magazines and souvenirs that appeal to travelers who seek refreshment or entertainment during their journeys. The sound of coins changing hands creates a constant metallic background to their sales pitches, while the paper wrapping of food items and the flip of magazine pages add textural elements to the growing complexity of station sounds that accompany increased human activity. The children's voices rise above the general conversation as families travel together, their excitement about train travel evident in animated discussions about destinations, schedules and the mechanical marvels of steam locomotives that capture young imaginations. Parents respond with patient explanations about railway procedures and travel etiquette, their voices carrying the mixture of affection and mild exasperation that accompanies family travel in an era when long-distance journeys require careful planning and considerable patience from all participants. The freight yard beyond the passenger platform contributes a constant background of industrial sounds including the bang of coupling cars, the hiss of air brakes, and the steady chuff of switch engines that assemble trains according to manifests that route cargo to destinations throughout the railway network. The yard workers communicate through hand signals and shouted instructions that coordinate the complex ballet of moving rail cars that carry the products of American agriculture and industry to markets near and far. The afternoon newspapers arrive by train from major publishing centers, their bundles creating solid thumps as they are thrown from mail cars onto station platforms where local distributors sort them for delivery to subscribers throughout the community. The rustle of paper as bundles are opened and counted adds to the constant background of commercial activity that makes railway stations centers of information as well as transportation, connecting local communities to regional and national news networks that depend upon railway service for timely distribution. The telegraph operator's key continues its rhythmic conversation throughout the afternoon, with increased message traffic reflecting the peak hours of railway activity when coordination between stations becomes critical for maintaining schedules and ensuring safe passage of trains that share track according to precise timing protocols developed through years of operational experience. The clicking of the key becomes as familiar as breathing to regular station occupants, its patterns conveying information in abbreviated codes that compress complex operational data into brief transmissions. The waiting room conversations shift and change as different groups of passengers come and go, their voices carrying accents and dialects that reflect the geographic diversity of railway travel in an era when trains provide the primary means of long-distance transportation for people from all walks of life. Businessmen discuss commercial opportunities in distant cities, farmers talk about crop prices and market conditions, families plan visits to relatives in other states,
and immigrants share information about destinations that represent hope for better lives in new communities. The late afternoon brings commuter traffic as local residents return from daily employment in nearby cities, their familiar faces and routine interactions with station personnel creating a sense of community continuity that contrasts with the transient nature of long-distance travelers. The sound of season tickets being punched and the casual greetings exchanged between regular passengers and railway employees reflect the social role of stations as gathering places where community members maintain connections despite the mobility that railway transportation makes possible. The dinner preparations in the station restaurant create aromatic accompaniments to the visual and auditory experiences of railway travel, with cooking smells that remind travelers of home while providing sustenance for those whose journeys require them to take meals away from their familiar domestic environments. The clatter of dishes and the voices of kitchen staff add layers to the acoustic complexity of station life that continues throughout the evening hours when restaurants serve travelers who face overnight journeys or extended layovers between connecting trains. The evening telegraph traffic includes weather reports and track condition updates that help railway personnel plan for overnight operations when reduced visibility and changing weather conditions create additional challenges for train crews who must maintain schedules while ensuring passenger safety. The operator's key takes on increased importance during these hours when coordination between stations becomes critical for preventing delays that could cascade through the network and affect service reliability throughout the system. The gas lamps begin to flicker on as daylight fades, their steady flames creating pools of warm light that contrast with the growing darkness outside the station windows while providing illumination for continued railway operations that run throughout the night hours. The lamplighter makes his rounds with practiced efficiency, checking each fixture and adjusting flames to provide consistent lighting levels that ensure passenger safety and enable continued commercial activity despite the absence of natural light. The night trains begin to arrive with their distinctive whistle patterns that identify them to experienced station personnel who know the characteristics of different locomotives and their scheduled services. The sleeping car porters emerge to assist passengers with their baggage and seating arrangements, their voices professionally courteous as they explain the amenities and procedures that make overnight railway travel comfortable for those whose journeys require them to spend the night aboard trains that cross great distances while passengers sleep in specially designed accommodations. The night telegraph operator arrives to relieve his day colleague, the transition marked by the brief interruption of key activity as operational responsibility passes from one shift to another according to schedules that ensure continuous communication throughout the hours when railway traffic continues despite the darkness that makes visual coordination impossible. The night operator settles into his chair with coffee and the resolve needed for maintaining alertness during the quiet hours when reduced activity can make concentration more challenging than during the busy daylight periods. The freight operations continue throughout the night with the sounds of switching engines and car movements that reflect the railway's commitment to moving cargo efficiently by utilizing hours when passenger service is reduced and tracks are more available for freight trains that carry the products of American industry and agriculture to markets throughout the continental network. The yard workers' voices carry clearly in the still night air as they coordinate the assembly of trains that will depart before dawn to maintain delivery schedules that connect producers with consumers across vast geographic distances. The station restaurant transitions to night service with simplified menus and reduced staff that accommodate the smaller number of passengers who travel during overnight hours while maintaining the availability of food service for those whose journeys require them to take meals at irregular hours. The kitchen sounds become more intermittent but continue as cooks prepare meals for night travelers who depend upon railway restaurants for sustenance during their journeys. The waiting room takes on a different character during the night hours as fewer passengers occupy the wooden benches and conversations become more subdued, with travelers who face overnight waits settling in for extended periods of patient waiting that test their endurance and commitment to their planned journeys. The gas lamps cast steady light on faces that show varying degrees of fatigue and anticipation as people adjust to the rhythm of railway travel that operates according to schedules that may not align with normal patterns of rest and activity. The night freight trains arrive and depart with less fanfare than passenger service but with equal precision, their movements coordinated through telegraph communications that ensure safe passage over tracks that must be shared among different types of railway traffic throughout the hours of darkness. The sounds of air brakes and coupling operations continue as yard crews assemble trains according to manifests that route cargo toward destinations that will receive deliveries during the following day's business hours. The cleaning crews begin their work during the quieter night hours, their brooms and mop buckets creating soft sounds of maintenance activity that keeps the station presentable for the following day's passenger traffic. The janitors work methodically through waiting areas, restrooms, and platform spaces that require daily attention to maintain the standards of cleanliness and order that reflect the railway's commitment to providing civilized travel accommodations despite the challenges of maintaining public facilities in constant use. The telegraph key maintains its steady conversation throughout the night, with reduced but consistent message traffic that coordinates train movements and shares operational information among stations that remain staffed to support continuous railway operations. The night operator's coffee cup creates gentle percussion against its saucer as he pauses between messages to maintain alertness during the long hours when concentration must be sustained despite the reduced activity that characterizes overnight railway operations. The night watchman begins his rounds through the station building and adjacent facilities that require security attention during hours when reduced staffing creates vulnerability to theft or vandalism that could disrupt railway operations or endanger passenger safety. His footsteps echo through corridors as he checks doors, windows, and storage areas while maintaining vigilance for any irregularities that might require attention from railway police or local law enforcement authorities who support station security. The early morning hours bring the first stirrings of renewed activity as railway personnel begin preparations for another day of passenger and freight service that will repeat the cycles of arrival and departure, loading and unloading, scheduling and coordination that make railway stations centers of continuous activity throughout the year. The sounds of steam radiators warming the building mingle with the first footsteps of employees who arrive before dawn to prepare for the day's operations that will begin with the arrival of the morning milk train and continue through the complex schedule of passenger and freight service that connects local communities to the national transportation network.
What it was like to spend the day as a bookstore clerk in 1890. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of Morrison's bookshop on State Street, casting long rectangles across the wooden floors that had been swept clean with horsehair brooms the evening before. The brass bell above the entrance door remained silent in these early hours, its clapper resting against the curved metal as the city slowly awakened around the narrow storefront that had housed books and papers for nearly 2 decades. Your workday began before the shop opened to customers, when the streets still echoed with the clip-clop of delivery horses and the distant whistle of the morning freight train. The heavy oak door required both hands to unlock, the brass key turning with a satisfying click that had worn smooth grooves in the metal over countless mornings. Inside, the familiar scent of leather bindings, paper, and the faint trace of lamp oil from the previous evening's work greeted you like an old friend. The first task involved lighting the gas fixtures that illuminated the shop's interior, each one requiring the careful application of a match to the brass burner, adjusting the flame until it cast steady light across the shelves that lined every wall from floor to ceiling. The wooden shelving, constructed from pine boards and painted a practical dark green, held thousands of volumes arranged according to the system that Mr. Morrison had developed over his years in the book trade. Each shelf bore small brass numerals that corresponded to entries in the master catalogue, a leather-bound ledger that served as the shop's primary organizational tool. Religious texts occupied the prime position near the front windows, their gold-embossed spines catching the morning light as customers browsed the latest editions of sermons, biblical commentaries and devotional works that formed the backbone of most bookshops' inventory. The leather-bound volumes, many imported from publishers in Boston and New York, required careful handling to prevent the binding from cracking along the spine where readers had opened them repeatedly. These books, with their tooled leather covers and gilt edges, represented the finest examples of the bookbinder's craft, each one requiring weeks of labor to complete, from the initial folding of signatures to the final application of gold leaf. The process of creating these fine bindings began with the preparation of the leather itself, which arrived at binderies in large sheets that had been treated with various tanning solutions to achieve the proper flexibility and durability. Calfskin provided the most prestigious binding material, its fine grain and smooth texture making it ideal for expensive volumes, while sheepskin offered a more economical alternative for books intended for everyday use. The leather required careful selection, with binders examining each sheet for flaws, scars or variations in thickness that might affect the finished product's appearance or durability. Poetry and literature filled the middle shelves with volumes by Tennyson, Longfellow, and Whittier, arranged alphabetically by author's surname. Each book bore a small paper label on the spine, handwritten in India ink with the author's name and a brief title, though space constraints often required abbreviations that regular customers learned to decipher over time. The paper labels, cut from sheets of white writing paper and affixed with flour paste, needed frequent replacement as they yellowed or became illegible from handling. The process of creating these labels required steady handwriting, as each letter needed to be formed clearly enough to remain readable from several feet away when the book rested on its shelf. The flour paste used for affixing labels was prepared fresh each week, by mixing flour with water in proportions that had been refined through years of experience. Too much water created a paste that dried too slowly and could damage paper, while too little water resulted in a mixture that dried too quickly to allow proper positioning of labels. The paste was applied with small brushes made from hog bristles, each brush cleaned carefully after use to prevent the buildup of dried paste that would make future applications difficult. Technical manuals and educational texts occupied the lower shelves, their practical bindings reflecting their intended use by mechanics, farmers, and students. These volumes, often printed on cheaper paper with simpler binding techniques, sold steadily to customers seeking information about everything from crop rotation to steam engine maintenance. The prices, penciled lightly on the front page, ranged from 25 cents for pamphlets to several dollars for comprehensive technical treatises. Agricultural guides proved particularly popular during planting and harvest seasons, with detailed instructions for soil preparation, seed selection, and pest management that farmers consulted regularly throughout the growing year. The paper used in these practical volumes varied considerably in quality and composition, with publishers choosing materials based on the book's intended use and price point. Fine writing paper, made from cotton rags and processed through multiple stages of bleaching and sizing, provided the best surface for printing and the greatest longevity, but its cost limited its use to expensive volumes. Cheaper books used paper made from wood pulp, which was less expensive to produce but more prone to yellowing and deterioration over time. The morning routine continued with dusting the shelves using soft cloths that had been washed and re-washed until they achieved the proper texture for cleaning book covers without scratching the leather or cloth bindings. Each volume required individual attention, lifted carefully from its place, dusted along the top edge where particles settled, and returned to its precise position on the shelf. This daily maintenance prevented the accumulation of dust that could damage the bindings or make books unpleasant for customers to handle. The dust itself told stories of the shop's daily life, carrying traces of coal smoke from the street, fiber particles from paper manufacturing, and the microscopic debris of urban existence that settled on every surface. The dusting cloths, typically made from old linen or cotton fabric that had become too worn for other uses, required careful selection and preparation. New cloth was too rough for delicate book covers, while cloth that had become too worn would leave lint on the book's surfaces. The ideal dusting cloth had been washed numerous times until it achieved a smooth, lint-free texture, that would remove dust without abrading the materials it contacted. Customer orders required careful attention throughout the day, recorded in a thick ledger book with lined pages where each request was noted in chronological order. Mrs. Henderson's standing order for the latest temperance literature, Mr. Walsh's monthly request for agricultural journals, and the school board's seasonal needs for textbooks all required tracking through a system of cross-references that linked customer names to specific titles and delivery dates. The order book, bound in brown leather with brass corners, contained hundreds of entries dating back several years, each one representing a customer's specific literary needs and the shop's commitment to fulfilling them. The ledger paper used for record keeping was manufactured specifically for business use, with horizontal lines printed in light blue ink that would not interfere with handwritten entries, but would provide guidance for neat, organized records. The paper was heavier than ordinary writing paper, designed to withstand frequent handling and to prevent ink from bleeding through to subsequent pages. Each page was numbered at the top, and the books were bound with reinforced spines that could withstand the constant opening and closing that business records required. Special orders presented particular challenges, as they required correspondence with publishers and distributors in distant cities. The process began with a carefully written letter on the shop's letterhead, detailing the exact title, author, publisher, and edition desired by the customer. These letters, composed with steel-nibbed pens dipped in India ink, followed standard business formats that publishers expected, with formal salutations and precise descriptions of the books being requested. The letterhead itself, printed by the local newspaper office, featured elegant typography that conveyed the shop's established reputation and professional standing within the community. The steel pen nibs used for business correspondence came in various styles, each designed for specific types of writing. Fine nibs were used for delicate script and detailed work, while broader nibs facilitated faster writing for routine correspondence. Each nib required proper care to maintain its writing quality, including regular cleaning to remove dried ink and careful storage to prevent damage to the writing tip. A damaged nib could ruin an important letter, making nib maintenance a critical aspect of business operations. The waiting period for special orders could extend from several weeks to several months, depending on the book's availability and the efficiency of the postal service. Meanwhile, customers inquired regularly about the status of their orders, requiring diplomatic explanations about the complexities of book distribution and the various factors that could delay shipments from Eastern publishers. These conversations often revealed customers' eagerness for specific titles, particularly when they sought books related to their professional work or personal interests that could not be satisfied by the shop's regular inventory. The postal system's reliability varied significantly, depending on the distance involved and the season of the year. Letters to New York publishers typically required 5 to 7 days for delivery, while correspondence with Boston publishers might arrive in as little as 3 days during favorable weather conditions. Winter storms, flooding, and other natural disasters could delay mail for weeks, creating uncertainty about when responses might arrive and making it difficult to provide customers with accurate estimates of delivery times. Inventory management consumed significant portions of each workday, as the shop's limited space required constant evaluation of which titles to stock and which to discontinue. Slow-moving books occupied valuable shelf space that could be used for faster-selling volumes, yet determining which books to remove required careful consideration of seasonal patterns, local preferences, and the likelihood of future demand. The inventory ledger, a separate volume from the order book, tracked each title's arrival date, initial quantity, current stock level, and sales history, providing data that informed decisions about reordering and discontinuation. The inventory system employed a numerical coding method that assigned each book a unique identifier, corresponding to its category, subcategory, and individual title. Religious works began with the number 1, followed by a decimal system that indicated specific denominations and subjects. Literature began with number 2, technical works with 3, and so forth through the shop's major categories.
This system allowed quick identification of books' proper locations and facilitated accurate record-keeping of inventory movements. The process of receiving new shipments began with the arrival of wooden crates delivered by freight wagon, each one packed with straw or wood shavings to protect the books during transport. The crates, secured with iron bands and sealed with wax, bore shipping labels that indicated their origin and contents, though the actual titles remained unknown until the crates were opened and their contents examined. The anticipation of opening these shipments provided one of the day's genuine pleasures, as each crate might contain sought-after titles, unexpected discoveries, or disappointing substitutions that would require additional correspondence with publishers. The wooden crates themselves were constructed from pine or poplar boards, assembled with iron nails and reinforced with metal bands to withstand the rigors of freight transport. Publishers typically reused crates multiple times, with many showing evidence of previous shipments in the form of old shipping labels, nail holes, and wear marks that told stories of their journeys between publishers and booksellers across the country. Unpacking required systematic care, with each book inspected for damage that might have occurred during shipping. Torn pages, damaged bindings or water stains could render books unsaleable, necessitating correspondence with publishers about replacements or credit adjustments. Acceptable books were sorted by category, priced according to established margins, and prepared for shelving according to the shop's organizational system. The packing materials, once the books were removed, found second lives as kindling for the shop's heating stove or as protective wrapping for books sold to customers who requested careful packaging. The inspection process required careful attention to various types of potential damage. Corner bumps could indicate rough handling during transport, while water stains suggested exposure to moisture that might have damaged multiple books in a shipment. Spine damage was particularly serious, as it affected both the book's appearance and its structural integrity. Books with damaged spines often required rebinding before they could be sold, adding to their cost and reducing profit margins. The pricing of books involved considerations beyond the simple markup of wholesale costs. Local competition, customer expectations, and the perceived value of specific titles all influenced the final price penciled discreetly inside the front cover. Popular novels might bear lower margins to encourage sales, while specialized technical works could command higher markups due to their limited audience and the difficulty of obtaining them elsewhere. Price adjustments occurred regularly as books aged on the shelves, with gradual reductions applied to slow-moving inventory to encourage sales and make room for newer arrivals. The process of determining appropriate prices required knowledge of local market conditions, including what other bookshops charged for similar titles and what customers were willing to pay for different types of books. Professional works typically commanded higher prices due to their specialized nature and limited audience, while popular fiction needed competitive pricing to attract customers who might purchase these books elsewhere. The shop maintained a pricing guide that listed standard markups for different categories of books, though individual titles often required special consideration based on their unique characteristics. Seasonal fluctuations affected every aspect of the book trade, with back-to-school periods driving demand for textbooks and educational materials, while the approach of Christmas increased sales of gift books, particularly volumes with elaborate bindings or illustrated plates. These seasonal patterns required advance planning, with orders placed months ahead to ensure adequate inventory during peak selling periods. The Christmas season brought particular challenges, as customers sought books suitable for gift giving, often requesting titles that would appeal to recipients whose reading preferences they could only guess. The school season created its own unique demands, with teachers and parents seeking textbooks that conformed to specific curricula adopted by local school boards. These requirements changed periodically as educational theories evolved and new textbooks became available, requiring the shop to maintain current knowledge of educational trends and to stock appropriate titles well in advance of the school year. The timing of textbook orders was critical, as late shipments could result in frustrated customers and lost sales to competitors who had planned more effectively. The shop's customers represented a cross-section of the community's literate population, from professional men seeking the latest publications in their fields to housewives browsing novels and domestic guides. Each customer category required different approaches, with some preferring detailed discussions about authors and subjects while others simply wanted quick assistance finding specific titles. Lawyers often sought legal texts and case studies, while doctors browsed medical journals and pharmaceutical guides that arrived monthly from Eastern publishers. Professional customers typically possessed specific knowledge about their fields and required accurate, up-to-date information that would serve their practical needs. Medical professionals sought journals that reported the latest surgical techniques and pharmaceutical developments, while lawyers needed access to recent court decisions and legislative changes that might affect their practices. These customers often placed standing orders for professional journals and were willing to pay premium prices for specialized information that would enhance their professional capabilities. Regular customers developed relationships with the shop over time, trusting the staff's recommendations and often accepting suggestions for new titles in their areas of interest. These relationships required careful cultivation, with mental notes about each customer's preferences, reading habits, and budget constraints informing future interactions and recommendations. Mr. Blackwood, the local banker, favored financial journals and economic treatises, while Miss Patterson, the school principal, regularly purchased educational materials and children's literature for both professional and personal use. The development of customer relationships involved remembering personal details about individual customers' interests, family situations, and professional needs. Mrs. Carlton, whose husband had recently died, gradually shifted from purchasing novels to seeking books about managing personal finances and household affairs. Young Mr. Stevens, recently graduated from college, sought books that would help him establish his law practice and understand local business customs. These personal transitions created opportunities to suggest appropriate books, and to demonstrate the shop's commitment to serving each customer's evolving needs. The physical demands of bookshop work included constant lifting and carrying, as boxes of books arrived regularly, and required distribution to appropriate shelves throughout the store. The weight of books, particularly multi-volume sets and technical manuals, made this aspect of the work more strenuous than the quiet atmosphere of the shop might suggest to casual observers. Encyclopedia sets, legal references and medical texts could weigh 30 pounds or more, requiring careful lifting techniques to prevent injury and strategic placement on lower shelves to avoid accidents during retrieval. The arrangement of heavy books required consideration of both customer convenience and staff safety. Multi-volume sets needed to be kept together, but placed where customers could easily access them without assistance. Legal references, frequently consulted by local attorneys, were positioned at comfortable heights for browsing, while medical texts used primarily by the town's physicians were arranged to facilitate quick location of specific subjects. The physical layout of the shop reflected years of experience in balancing these competing demands. Bookkeeping responsibilities extended beyond simple sales transactions to include tracking inventory levels, recording special orders, and maintaining accounts for customers who purchased books on credit. The ledger books, bound in leather with numbered pages, contained detailed records of every transaction, cross-referenced by date, customer name, and book title to facilitate future inquiries and year-end accounting. Each entry required careful penmanship, as mistakes could create confusion about inventory levels or customer accounts that might not be discovered until months later. The bookkeeping system employed double entry principles that required each transaction to be recorded in multiple locations to ensure accuracy and provide cross-checks against errors. Sales were recorded in chronological order in the daily sales ledger, then transferred to individual customer accounts and inventory records. This system created multiple opportunities to catch errors but also required significant time and attention to maintain accurately. Credit arrangements with established customers required careful evaluation of their financial reliability and the establishment of clear terms for payment. Professional men and established business owners might receive extended credit terms, while newer customers typically paid cash or provided satisfactory references before credit privileges were extended. The credit ledger, maintained separately from the sales records, tracked outstanding balances and payment histories that informed decisions about extending additional credit or requiring cash payments for future purchases. The evaluation of creditworthiness involved consideration of customers' occupations, property ownership, family situations, and payment histories with other local businesses. Bank officers, established merchants, and property owners generally qualified for extended credit terms, while younger customers or those in uncertain financial situations typically needed to establish payment histories before receiving credit privileges. The shop's credit policies balanced the desire to serve customers' needs with the necessity of maintaining financial stability. The afternoon hours brought steady streams of browsers and purchasers, each requiring attention while maintaining awareness of others who might need assistance. The art of bookshop service involved being available without being intrusive, offering help without pressuring customers who preferred to browse independently. Some customers appreciated detailed discussions about authors and subjects, while others resented interruption during their browsing and preferred to approach the counter only when ready to make purchases. The skill of reading customers' preferences and moods developed over time through careful observation of body language, browsing patterns, and verbal cues. Customers who entered with specific purposes typically moved directly to particular sections and appreciated quick assistance in locating desired titles. Browsers who wandered slowly through the shop often welcomed gentle suggestions about new arrivals or related titles, while others clearly preferred to explore independently without staff intervention. School children often visited the shop in groups, seeking required textbooks or browsing the limited selection of juvenile literature available. These young customers required patient guidance and careful supervision to prevent damage to valuable books while encouraging their interest in reading and learning. The shop maintained a small section of books specifically chosen for younger readers, including adventure stories, moral tales, and educational works that parents and teachers considered appropriate for developing minds. The selection of children's books reflected contemporary ideas about appropriate reading material for young people, emphasizing moral instruction, character development, and practical education. Adventure stories needed to provide excitement without encouraging dangerous behavior, while educational books combined instruction with entertainment to maintain young readers' interest. The shop's children's section served as a carefully curated introduction to literature and learning for the community's younger generation. The catalog system required constant maintenance, with new entries added for arriving books and existing entries updated to reflect current inventory levels. Each book received a unique catalog number that corresponded to its shelf location, with cross-references for author, title, and subject matter that allowed quick location of specific volumes or related materials. The catalog cards, written on heavy paper stock and filed alphabetically in wooden boxes, served as the shop's primary reference tool for both staff and customers seeking information about available titles. The catalog system employed a modified version of the Dewey Decimal Classification System, adapted to reflect the shop's specific inventory and local customers' needs. Religious works received expanded classification numbers to accommodate the variety of denominational materials, while technical works were subdivided according to local industries and professions. The system evolved over time as new subjects emerged, and as the shop's inventory changed to reflect customer demands. Window displays needed periodic updating to maintain customer interest and showcase new arrivals or seasonal selections. The process involved careful consideration of which books to feature, how to arrange them attractively, and how to protect them from fading due to prolonged exposure to sunlight streaming through the large front windows. Popular novels, beautifully bound gift books, and timely non-fiction works rotated through the display cases according to seasonal themes and current events that might spark customer interest. The creation of effective window displays required artistic sensibility combined with commercial awareness. Books needed to be positioned to catch passers-by's attention while remaining protected from weather damage and theft. Seasonal themes coordinated with local events and holidays, while displays of new arrivals generated interest in the shop's current inventory. The window displays served as the shop's primary advertising medium, competing with other merchants for pedestrians' attention. Mail order business provided an additional revenue stream, as customers from surrounding rural areas requested books through correspondence. These orders arrived regularly, written on personal stationery or business letterhead, requesting specific titles or asking for recommendations in particular subject areas. Processing mail orders required careful attention to packaging, as books needed protection during postal transport, and accurate record keeping to track shipments and payments from distant customers who might not visit the shop for months or years. The mail order customers typically lived in rural areas where access to bookshops was limited or non-existent. These customers often possessed specific professional or personal interests that required specialized books not available through general merchants. Farm equipment dealers sought technical manuals, rural ministers needed theological works, and isolated professionals required journals and references to maintain their expertise. Serving these customers required extensive correspondence and careful attention to their unique needs. The relationship with local publishers and printers created opportunities for handling locally produced books, pamphlets, and periodicals that complemented the shop's inventory of titles from major Eastern publishing houses. These local publications often featured subjects of particular interest to regional customers, including county histories, local business directories, and specialized agricultural guides tailored to regional growing conditions and markets. Local publishing ventures reflected the community's specific interests and needs in ways that national publishers could not address. County histories documented local families, businesses, and events that held special significance for regional Sisteritas, was Tokal Puls Wisum Warda Brutamins, was Tokal Puls The Sprathunda Forda Bruti Boza Buritis, was Spurza Proti Distritas, was Spurza Proti Distrita Dutaridin Dutim Sistritas, was Tokal Puls was. Agricultural guides addressed local soil conditions, climate patterns, and crop varieties that were particularly suited to the area. Business directories served local commercial needs by providing information about regional enterprises and their proprietors. Repair services for damaged books provided additional income while serving customers who valued their existing volumes. Simple repairs, such as reattaching loose pages or reinforcing weakened bindings, could be performed in the shop using basic bookbinding tools and materials. More complex restoration required sending books to professional binderies in larger cities, but the shop served as an intermediary, accepting damaged books and coordinating their repair and return to grateful customers. The tools required for basic book repair included bone folders for creasing paper, small brushes for applying adhesives, sharp knives for trimming damaged edges, and various types of thread and adhesives for binding repairs. The shop maintained a small collection of including different types of paper, cloth, and leather that could be used for simple repairs. More complex repairs required materials and expertise that were only available from professional binderies.
The lending library component of many bookshops created ongoing relationships with customers who paid annual fees for borrowing privileges. This service required tracking which books were borrowed by which customers when they were due for return, and assessing fines for overdue items. The library records, maintained in separate ledgers from sales transactions, documented the reading preferences of community members and helped inform decisions about which titles to purchase for the lending collection. The lending library served customers who could not afford to purchase books regularly, but who wanted access to current literature and non-fiction works. Annual membership fees typically ranged from $2 to $5, depending on the scope of borrowing privileges and the quality of the collection. The library collection included popular novels, current magazines, and reference works that were too expensive for many individuals to purchase, but were valuable for occasional consultation. Educational institutions provided steady customers for textbooks, reference works, and supplementary materials that teachers and professors required for their courses. These institutional sales often involve negotiations about pricing, delivery schedules, and payment terms, as schools and colleges typically operated on annual budgets and required advance planning for major purchases. The shop maintained relationships with local schools, the nearby college, and specialized training institutes that regularly needed books related to their specific curricula. The institutional market required different approaches than individual customer sales. School boards and college administrators needed detailed proposals that outlined exactly which books would be provided, when they would be delivered, and how payments would be arranged. These negotiations often involved competitive bidding against other bookshops, and required careful attention to profit margins while maintaining competitive pricing. Professional journals and periodical subscriptions created recurring revenue streams, while serving customers who needed regular access to current information in their fields. Managing these subscriptions required tracking renewal dates, processing payments, and ensuring timely delivery of issues as they arrived from publishers. Medical journals, legal periodicals, agricultural magazines, and trade publications all required different handling procedures and storage arrangements, while awaiting pickup by subscribers. The subscription business required careful record keeping to track which customers had paid for which publications and when their subscriptions would expire. Renewal notices needed to be sent well in advance of expiration dates to allow time for customers to respond, and for the shop to process renewals with publishers. Late renewals could result in missed issues and dissatisfied customers, making timely administration of subscription services critical to customer satisfaction. The shop's role as a community information center extended beyond book sales, to include services such as accepting messages for customers, providing writing materials for correspondence, and serving as an unofficial meeting place for literary and educational discussions. Regular customers often lingered after making purchases to discuss current events, share opinions about recently read books, or seek recommendations for future reading. These conversations, while not directly profitable, built the relationships that sustained the shop's business over time. The informal social functions of the bookshop reflected the limited entertainment and information options available in smaller communities. The shop served as a gathering place for educated residents who shared interests in literature, current events, and intellectual pursuits. These social interactions created a sense of community among the shop's customers and encouraged regular visits, even when specific purchases were not required. Evening hours occasionally extended the shop's operating schedule during busy seasons or when special events warranted extended service. Oil lamps supplemented gas fixtures during these extended hours, creating a warm, intimate atmosphere that encouraged browsing and conversation. The additional lighting costs needed to be balanced against increased sales, but evening hours often attracted customers who could not visit during regular business hours due to their work schedules. The decision to offer evening hours depended on seasonal demand patterns and special community events that might bring additional customers to the downtown area. Holiday shopping seasons justified the additional expense of lighting and staff time, while special lectures or community meetings created opportunities for increased sales to visitors who might not otherwise enter the shop. Closing procedures each evening required systematic attention to numerous details that ensured the shop's security and prepared for the following day's business. Gas fixtures needed careful extinguishing in proper sequence, with the main valve turned off to prevent dangerous leaks during overnight hours. The brass cash box containing the day's receipts required counting and recording before being locked in the shop's small safe, which stood behind the counter like a squat iron guardian of the day's commercial transactions. The process of securing the shop each evening involved checking window latches, ensuring that valuable books were properly shelved and accounted for, and verifying that all gas fixtures had been properly extinguished. The front door's multiple locks required careful attention, as did the window displays that contained attractive merchandise that might tempt nighttime intruders. Final inventory checks involved walking through the shop to ensure that valuable books remained in their proper places, and that no items had been mislaid during the day's activities. Expensive volumes sometimes migrated from their assigned locations as customers browsed and failed to return books to their proper shelves. Finding and reshelving these displaced books prevented confusion and potential losses that might not be discovered until much later. The day's correspondence, including letters from publishers, responses to customer inquiries, and orders for new inventory, required filing in the appropriate folders within the shop's wooden filing cabinet. These letters, written on various types of paper with different qualities of ink and penmanship, documented the ongoing business relationships that sustained the shop's operations and provided historical records of commercial transactions and customer communications. The filing system organized correspondence by subject matter, with separate folders for different publishers, major customers, and types of business transactions. This organization facilitated quick retrieval of specific letters when questions arose about previous orders or agreements. The accumulated correspondence provided valuable records for tax purposes and legal documentation of business activities. Preparation for the following day included reviewing the next day's expected deliveries, checking the appointment book for customer meetings or special orders, and ensuring that adequate supplies of wrapping paper, string and other materials were available for the next day's business. This advanced preparation helped ensure smooth operations and prevented delays that might frustrate customers or interfere with business activities. The appointment book documented scheduled visits from sales representatives, expected delivery times for special orders, and arrangements for institutional customers who required specific attention. Reviewing these appointments allowed proper preparation of materials and information that would be needed for successful interactions with these important customers and business partners. The quiet satisfaction of organizing knowledge, connecting readers with books that would inform or entertain them, and maintaining a cornerstone of the community's intellectual life provided rewards that extended beyond the modest wages typical of retail employment. Each properly shelved book represented potential enlightenment for future readers. Each successful special order demonstrated the shop's value to customers with specific needs, and each day's sales contributed to the larger mission of making printed knowledge accessible to those who sought it in an era when books remained precious repositories of human learning and imagination. The bookshop served as a bridge between the world of ideas contained in printed books and the practical needs of community members who sought information, entertainment, and intellectual stimulation. This role carried responsibilities that extended beyond simple commercial transactions to include guidance, education, and cultural preservation within the local community. The rhythm of bookshop life, with its alternating periods of quiet organization and customer interaction, created a work environment that appealed to those who valued literature and learning while serving the practical needs of a commercial enterprise. The constant handling of books, from unpacking new shipments to shelving returned volumes, provided tactile connection to the physical objects that contained humanity's accumulated wisdom and creativity, making each workday a small contribution to the preservation and dissemination of knowledge within the community. The seasonal patterns of bookshop work reflected the broader rhythms of community life, with busy periods during school terms and holidays alternating with quieter times that allowed for inventory management and system maintenance. These natural fluctuations created opportunities for different types of work and prevented the monotony that might characterize other retail establishments. The evolution of reading preferences and publishing trends required constant attention to changing customer needs and market conditions. New authors emerged regularly, scientific and technical knowledge advanced rapidly, and social movements created demand for books on topics that had previously generated little interest. Staying current with these trends required extensive reading of trade publications and regular correspondence with publishers about upcoming releases and market developments. The bookshop's inventory represented a carefully curated selection of human knowledge and creativity, chosen to serve the specific needs and interests of the local community, while maintaining broad appeal to casual browsers and serious scholars alike. This balance required intimate knowledge of customer preferences combined with awareness of broader cultural and intellectual trends that might influence future demand. The relationships between booksellers and publishers formed a complex network of commercial and personal connections that facilitated the flow of information about new releases, market conditions, and industry developments. These relationships, maintained through regular correspondence and occasional visits from sales representatives, provided the foundation for the shop's ability to serve customer needs and maintain current inventory. The daily operations of the bookshop required integration of numerous skills and knowledge areas,
from practical business management to literary expertise to customer service abilities. Success in book selling demanded not only commercial acumen but also genuine appreciation for books and reading that could communicate itself to customers and inspire their confidence in the shop's recommendations and services. The physical environment of the bookshop, with its carefully arranged shelves, adequate lighting and comfortable browsing spaces, contributed significantly to customers' experience and willingness to spend time exploring the available inventory. The arrangement of books by subject matter, the accessibility of popular titles, and the overall atmosphere of scholarly quietude all influence customers' perceptions of the shop's quality and reliability. The bookshop's contribution to community intellectual life extended beyond its commercial functions to include support for educational institutions, provision of research materials for local professionals, and maintenance of library services for residents who could not afford to purchase books regularly. These functions established the shop as an essential community resource that served needs far beyond simple retail transactions. The careful attention to detail that characterized every aspect of bookshop operations reflected the nature of books themselves as complex objects requiring specialized knowledge and handling techniques. From the proper storage conditions that preserved bindings and paper to the cataloging systems that facilitated quick location of specific titles, every procedure reflected awareness of books' unique characteristics and needs. The integration of new technologies and methods into traditional bookshop practices required careful evaluation of their benefits and costs. Improved printing techniques made books more affordable and durable, while new transportation methods accelerated delivery times and expanded the range of available titles. These developments created opportunities for enhanced customer service while requiring adjustments to established procedures and systems.